Let me go to Mark Brnovich. He is the Arizona Attorney General. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. ESG may be an antitrust violation. I love this approach. Welcome to the program, Mark.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for all that you do.
Okay, so tell me how you view ESG and what it means to the people of Arizona and the people of the world.
The people of the world, the people especially in this country, ESG, and I'm sure your listeners know, stands for the Environmental, Social, and Governance Movement. And basically, these are far left, progressive, woke liberals that want to control your life and your livelihood. And what they have been doing is they essentially have been organizing, or, the Wall Street banks and money managers, people like Climate Action, 100 plus have more than, 65 million trillion with a T in assets. And what they do is they put pressure on companies, pressures on banks to be very woke and very progressive. And we've seen this manifest itself most recently in the energy sector because they want to be green, they want to be socialist. So banks now and financial institutions are being pressured not to invest or not to provide any sort of funding for oil, gas, things that essentially make us energy independent. And I think especially, Glenn, in light of the events that we've seen in the last couple of weeks, that even though these climate activists, the pointy-headed liberals, think they know best, literally we see what's going on in the world, and it proves more than ever that the United States and our security depends on being energy independent and not woke.
And it is, would you agree, it is going to trickle down to the average individual? I mean, I won't be able to buy perhaps the car I want because my ESG score will be too low. I can guarantee it will be.
Yeah, and this is the woke neo-Marxist, and we see part of this going on in China with the social scores on an individual basis. But this impact that it's going to have on every single person listening, because what happens with the ESG movement, it's being pushed. It's the far left, it's the fossil fuel haters, and they're literally using your 401k, your investment funds, if you have any sort of retirement plan, and they're using that basically to drive their woke agenda. And so everything from the price of energy, obviously, when we're not drilling in Anwar or we're not doing permits, the oil companies or gas companies, coal companies can't get financing. That means higher energy costs, and higher energy costs, as we all know, ends up being that we pay more for our groceries, we pay more for our milk, and we know, and I know, that this isn't going to stop in the energy industry. We're already seeing this with things like the firearms industries.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see it with religious liberties. And so ultimately, this is the far left, that neo-Marxist goal of, ironically, for the Marxists, they're going to control the financial institutions and the woke money managers, and they're going to use that, as Lenin said, the proverbial using our own rope to hang us with. Okay,
so why do you say this is an antitrust violation?
Well, I think, once again, I've been a tried and true principled conservative my entire life here in Arizona, and I think that very often the left comes up and is consistent in pushing their agenda, and our folks, us on the right, need to think sometimes a little outside of the box. And so we know this is wrong, what they're doing. We know that folks have, identified this problem and issue. And so now the issue, Glenn, is, well, what do we do about it? And so I have certain tools in my toolbox as the Attorney General. And I said, well, wait a minute. Antitrust law said that you can have agreements between competitors to artificially restrict competition. Are there third-party agreements that restrain or result in collusion that harm consumers? And so we have begun an investigation. I'm not saying I'm for sure where it's going, but I do think that if your 401k or your pension plan or your retirement savings are being used to facilitate a political agenda by big banks and big money managers, that very well could be a form of collusion that's harming consumers.
Well, I just think this is genius, quite honestly, and I can't imagine you can't find it. My book is full of footnotes on all of the things they're doing, and you can, the agreements that the banks have signed have said we're getting out of of this kind of business. We're no longer going to make loans to these kinds of businesses. Our standards on social justice are this, and it is happening. I mean, it's like the mob, just a very buttoned-up mob, when they call each other and say, "Boy, you're really putting yourself at reputational risk," which means you're going to be put out of business if you don't get on this side.
Glenn, you hit the nail on the head as always, and you're absolutely right. And the key to this, from a legal perspective, from my perspective, we know that it's out there, is that, well, are there third-party agreements, either formal or informal, that are restraining competition, and are they essentially inviting each other to collude to advance their far-left agenda? And you know that incremental-wise, the left is very organized, and there's an assault on our rights. And you, I know you talk about this with what's going on with critical race theory and the 1619 Project, and how they're trying to get young kids to hate our country. I know I've sued the universities over everything from giving tuition to people that don't have legal status to, what they're doing with their sweetheart real estate deals. And so we, people like you, people like me, need to help make sure our kids understand that what's going on is crony capitalism, and you're getting these neo-Marxist socialist, companies that are feeding the alligator and hoping that they eat them last. And we all know, your listeners know, that every revolution will eventually eat itself, because the left, these banks and these money managers are playing footsies with the far left. They will never be far left enough for them. There's always going to be something else they'll need to do, and eventually they'll destroy this country, and they're already on that path. That's why I'm fighting.
So when will you have an answer, and what does this path, if it does come back, your research does come back and say, yeah, I think I can prove this, what does that mean?
Well, hopefully we've actually started the process, and a lot of it, quite frankly, is confidential by statute, and
sure.
No prosecutor worth their salt is ever going to say what they're going to do before they get all the facts and evidence. But I assure you that we take this seriously, and we've already started to get some materials. We're reviewing it, and that probably will lead to more subpoenas and more discussions, and I'm sure they're going to probably object to some stuff, and then we'll probably end up in court somewhere fighting over what we can get or not get. And, we're hoping this moves quickly, but, unfortunately, the left has a phalanx of lawyers and lobbyists, and, they try to make it, miserable for us. And, they've got the media on their side and everything else, and so they kind of play for time sometimes. So, but we're going to do everything we can, Glenn, to move quickly on this and get the other information. And, like I said, a lot of it's legally and ethically we can't.
Yeah, I understand that. So, Mark, I appreciate it. When I saw your op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, I thought this is a great angle to attack from. We've got to hit them on all fronts, quite honestly, and I think this one has a really good chance of making a huge difference. But I will tell you, do not dismiss the pushback from the right. There are a lot of these rhino Republicans and honestly, a lot of capitalists who think, I can't tell the free market what to do. These are companies and they choose to do it. This isn't the free market. This is not the free market. By design, this is to usher in a stakeholder, from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. So be very wary of the Republicans as well. They have been holding things up in some states as well.
Absolutely, and I understand that, and that's why I made that reference to crony capitalism. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of times people see what's going on with the sweetheart real estate insider deals and what's going on in public universities, and so we don't, unfortunately, have that free market. You do have certain elites, and like I said, we're seeing this with the money managers and the bankers that actually have a lot of influence and kind of pick and choose, who gets to run for what office and all this other stuff. And look, Glenn, I'm a public school kid. I'm a first-generation American. My family fled communism. I am playing with house money, living in the greatest country in the world. So I don't back down from the fight, and it's slow and steady wins the race, and I'm going to keep fighting.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it. Mark Brnovich, he is the Attorney General from Arizona. Please keep us up to speed. We'll follow that story for you.